You may be amazed to discover how well the QTTL technology in the Qflash will cover an entire room with light. And it'll make some shots that you thought were never possible quite simple to create.
Lesson 8. More TTL off-camera flash indoors.
By taking advantage of the fact that a Qflash puts out over 2 times the amount of light compared to a typical shoe-mounted flash, and the advanced TTL technology packed into the Qflash, we can position one Qflash up on a side wall or in the corner of a room and shoot just about anywhere. Here's a room full of customer service stations, and we need to shoot the employees here for their company website. Now, the boss doesn't want us to disrupt the joint here with a bunch of lights, and he's asked us to be quick about the shoot. Not a problem for us. We'll start off by placing the Qflash in a position to cover the people with some nice front or side or both front and side lighting. Then, we'll choose a camera that will hold up well to high ISO shooting so that we can shoot at either ISO 800 or ISO 1000 and produce nice, clean images. We'll need to trigger the Qflash without a cable for a shoot like this. And we could use a wireless infrared TTL transmitter, but they work best when the Qflash is in front of the camera so that it can see the transmitter signal. So we'll do something that no other system can do. We're going to set up the Qflash to work in wireless TTL mode using the long-range radio triggering signal of the Quantum FreeX wire system. Let's start out by choosing the right gear. Using a light stand, a Quantum Turbo 2x2 pack, and a Qflash T5d-R, we'll connect up the FreeWire FW7Q wireless TTL receiver right to the Qflash. Now, this doesn't need any batteries, and it snaps right on the side of the Qflash for a simple and worry-free connection. We'll dial in the channel on this receiver to channel 1, and turn on zone 1. Then point the bare tube of the Qflash right up into where the corner meets the ceiling. Now, don't worry about the color of the wall and the color of the ceiling and the color of that crazy door over there. Custom white balance will remove just about any color you'll ever run into, even that crazy blue shipping door. Next, let's set up the camera to send its wireless TTL info over to the Qflash by connecting the D adapter to our camera's hot shoe. And instead of plugging in the D adapter cable to the Qflash, we'll plug it into the bottom of a FreeX wire transmitter. Now, this is the FW9T model, and it's mounted to the camera's tripod. Once we connect it and turn on the TTL function here, and turn on channel 1 and zone 1, it will send a very powerful radio signal over to the Qflash with all the TTL info that we need for good exposure levels. The range of this system is 600 to 1,000 feet, which is lots more than we need in a room like this for sure. I'll set up the camera in manual exposure mode, and I want to shoot at an aperture of f/6 at ISO 800. Now, I'm going to use my meter to measure the room light, not the flash, just the room light, to figure out where I'm going to set my shutter. It tells me in order to make a perfect exposure at ISO 800 and an aperture of f/6, my shutter needs to be 1/30th of a second. So I'll make a test shot with no flash, and look what I get. A well-exposed image, but with awful light quality. We really need a Qflash for this job. I want the background to be a little darker, and I want this shot to have a sort of a feeling that the light's coming from the side instead of the awful overhead fluorescence in this room. So, first thing I'm going to do is underexpose the room light by 1 stop, and I'll do that by raising the shutter speed up to a 1/60th of a second. Then, let's fire off the Qflash in QTTL mode that is set to my aperture of f/6 and see the lighting start to take shape. We will, of course, be careful to place our single area autofocus point right on the subject's face. We'll, of course, do a custom white balance. And if we find that the camera is producing an image that's a little under or overexposed for our liking, we can always use the QTTL fill function by adjusting the dial on the top of the D adapter. The power of the Turbo 2x2 battery will give me a little over 900 shots on this job, which is a lot more than I need and gives me plenty of power to spare.
Tips from a pro.
Wasn't that cool? Yep. Here's more.
Lenses first.
Decide which lens you want to shoot with first. If I was going to shoot this series of images with a 28 to 70 millimeter zoom lens, the wide end of that lens would show a lot of background. And shooting at f/5.6 would give me a lot of sharpness in the background too. So I may have chosen to shoot that at f4 for less depth of field. Now that would completely change my ISO and my camera setting choices. But for this job, I didn't want all that background, so I used a 70 to 200 millimeter f2.8 lens, and I thought f/5.6 was the right level of sharpness for the background. Good thing I chose my lens first, because it saved me a lot of time.